rabbis of yesteryear. Now, we are in the month of Shvat at the moment. It marks the Hilula of a really famous rabbi, Rabbi Abraham Atlan. Very, very great rabbi of his time. I want to give his full title, Rabbi Abraham Atlan Yehuda. He Hilula, I'm not sure the exact date in the month of Shvat. Hopefully we'll find out maybe in the coming minutes. But he would become a chief rabbi of the great famous place of Iraq. Now it's interesting, his grandfather's name was Rabbi Abraham. I think his father's name was Rabbi Atlan itself, and he was educated under really great Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Mordechai Shtandoch, another rabbi we've spoken about on various occasions here before inside this series. Now we're not sure the exact date he was actually born itself per se, but seemingly it was possibly around the time period of 1855, 1856, and most notably it seems like he passed away in the year 1947 to 1948 respectively. That's what it seems like in of itself. So Nolad Rab Avram Yehuda. So I think that was his father's name. I think he was obviously a religious family and they were working in trade. So he would learn a chunk of the day, especially in the morning, I think. He would learn Torah. So he would go on to learn in the famous yeshiva of another great rabbi who's talking about here on various occasions before, Rabbi Shlomo Moshe Laniado. At that stage in time, that window of time, he would actually not continue his working in, let's say, the trading business, and would then work at that point in time, would learn at a huge amount at that stage in time. I think there was a election of the committee, the spiritual committee in 1927. He was one of the 3 dayanim inside the famous Jewish court, I believe, in that place. Rav Salmon Chogi, who was another great rabbi of that point in time. He was a Rosh Abed Din. There was also the famous rabbi, Rav Sasson Kadori. So who was Rav Kadori? We've spoken about him on various occasions here in this series. He actually himself, between 1886 and 1971. He was a Rav Rashi of the Jewish community in Babel. He was also a head of Kehila over there, respectively. He'd have various different prominent positions. I think in 1920, himself, Rav Sasson Kadori, was appointed a judge in, I think, second position inside that. I think under the Rishut of Harab Yechezkel Elia. And he was very, very famous and great inside this Kehila. Remember at that time, it was a very, very strong community. I think there was, at that point in time, especially when he had prominent positions, there was King Faisal Harishon, who was over there at that point in time. That's something that we very much have to point out. And he was ordained as a rabbi. He was a rabbi that gave a grandiose sermon. He had a great Beit Midrash, let's say, huge knowledge in of itself, had huge wisdom, knowledge, according to the Sephardi Rabbanut, and was, I think it was part of the Midrash Bet Zilka, if I'm not mistaken. He was seen maybe towards more the lenient sides of the rulings, let's just say, in of itself. He would tend to paskin, if I'm not mistaken. Al-pi min hag Rabbanei Sfard nachshav klibarli mevechinat datit pesikotav halibriyot hayu lo leitim leraot sheken ore et chachmat shel yoter rabbanim. So that's very interesting. Well, very, very well established, very well ordained in of itself, and very interesting. He would, I think, eventually he would. There was connections, I think, to the Zionistic movement also, and many of the Iraqi Jews would actually end up going to Israel at that point in time. We've spoken about it extensively. Hopefully, we're going to record a series on the history of the Jewish community of Iraq. That's going to be many multiple times. Famously, he would meet and have correspondence with King Faisal II, as mentioned before. He was part of I think was close to other rabbis he would meet at that stage in time. He was definitely a Zionistic figure. And that's something that will, again, he was close to other rabbis, including Rabbi Yehuda Leib HaKohen, Fishman Maimon, Rabbi Ben Zion Meir Chai Uzi, one of the famous rabbis, Rabbi Ezra Dangor, and this famous picture, actually, I'm looking at it at this point in time while I am speaking, and that was, I'll just state over what it says actually in Hebrew here, just using Wikipedia as a source of it, especially during the time period of 1960 7 war. You remember at that point in time there was Farhud in Iraq. It says here, I think the majority of the Jewish community would actually make Aliyah from Iraq to Israel. I think part of the מבצע עזרא ונחמיה, המשך הרב כדורי פועלו למען הקהילה היהודית. כך לדוגמת הצליח הרב כדורי לשכנע את נשיא עיראק עבד אל כרים קסאם, this was in the year 1958, it says over here, just לפתוח בחזרה את כותלי האוניברסיטאות ליהודים. אז זאת לא הצליח כדורי למנוע את העברית בית הקברות היהודי העתיק. If I'm not mistaken, it says over here, respectively. Just hold on 1 second, friends, over here. And we're exploring the life of a really great former chief rabbi of Iraq over here on this special edition. So anyone, if you are new here, welcome to our community. That's something that we very much have to point out. So he was Rav Sasson Kadori was a great rabbi. We're going on a bit of a tangent at the moment because we happen to be speaking about Rabbi Abraham Atlan over here on this special edition of it. So let's continue speaking about him. So much apologies. At the moment, we can really get excited. Okay, so it's with regards to Rabbi Atlan over here. Lachat Kufa hitmana Rav Abraham lerosh ab bedin. So Rabbi Abraham Atlan would become the head of Jewish court after Kasher Rav Sasson hitmale lecham bashi. But Rav Salmon hitpates. Remember, there was Rav Salmon Hugi, who was another great rabbi there. Rav Shimesh misharet chachmei bashi bebagdad. B'shanim 1930 at 1932. So be about 2-3 years the chief rabbi of the Jewish community in Baghdad, which was a really prominent position at that stage in time. So let's say a word over here with regards to Rav Salman Rogi. He's another great rabbi we've mentioned back here on various occasions for here inside the series. So I think it's worth speaking about him for a minute. His full title was Rav Salman Hugi Abudi. He lived between the years, I believe, 1894 to 1973, if I'm not mistaken. He was another great rabbi in his time. I think he was born in Baghdad. He was also part of the Midrash Talmud Torah over there, the famous yeshiva. And Yeshivat Midrash Bet Zilka, he was also very much part of another place that we've spoken about here on various occasions before, here inside this series. And those yeshivot had some of the greatest rabbis in various different points in time. And I think they tried to draft him into the Ottoman Empire. I'm not sure what happened over there. And he was close with other great rabbis. Rabbi Abudi happened to be. Also Rabbi Yoshua Moshe Yecheskel, for example, who was a great rabbi, I think in Basra, if I'm not mistaken. And I think in 1951, there was an aliyah to land of Israel. Obviously, as I mentioned before, the מבצע עזרא ונחמיה. ונשלח לעבוד בנטיעת העצים. So originally he would work, I think, inside there, but then eventually he would take a very prominent position and become a Dayan of the Jewish court in Petach Tikva. Rabbi Budi would. Remember, beforehand in Iraq, he would have various different important positions over there. That's something that we have to point out. And he'll become eventually the Av Bet Din of Jerusalem in 1957. 1960, he was part of the Moatzot Rabbanit Harishit over there and part of a committee choosing the Rabbanim in of itself. Especially 1964, we'll see him being part of the Chaver Moatzot Rabbanit Harishit. 1965, he'd be appointed as part of the Jewish court of the great rabbis in of itself. Without putting inside, he would give various different Shurei Torah, especially in the famous Ohel Rachel synagogue in the Ruchma neighborhood, if I'm not mistaken. I think he would actually, Rabbi Budi was so great, he would get the prize of Yakir Yerushalayim. That was another very great, let's say, accolade that he would actually receive in of itself. He passed away himself, I believe, in, if I'm not mistaken, he would pass away in the year 1973. So you can see the caliber of rabbi that Rabbi Abraham Atlan Yehuda actually was over there. So let's explore maybe a few more interesting facts with regards to him now that we are speaking about him. His educator was someone, Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Mordechai Sandoch. This is another rabbi we've spoken about extensively inside this series. So let's try and say a word within regards to him. Also, I think we did record a video within regards to him also, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of months ago, which I very, very much recommend everyone to look at that one. Sasson Mordechai Sandoch, I think, there was a few. The Sandoch family itself happens to have been a very, very famous family, I think, in Iraq in various occasions of time. And I very much recommend everyone to look more about it. I think he himself had a very, very famous great-grandfather, if I'm not mistaken. that's something that we have to point out. Okay, so that was one of his educators, Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Mordechai Sandoch. Okay, so let's just go back to, he was born, we're talking now again about Rabbi Abraham Atlan Yehuda. He was born in the year Hetafresh Tet Vav, and he was known for his very, very tzniut with regards to midot characteristics in itself. We talked about that, how he would learn very early inside the morning, and how he would really get imbued and start learning full time from various different points in time. So how important it was, and what a pivotal figure he was. He would get that chief rabbinate position, the premiership over there, and that would be a 2-3 year position, if I'm not mistaken. And as mentioned before, he would also be part of the yeshiva of Rabbi Shlomo Moshe Laniado. Okay, let's explore a bit more within regards to him. There is a few more facts we can definitely point out within regards to him. He had a book that was printed in Hetafresh Chavdaled called the Seder Ma'asiyot. This was another great book of his, which I think we've mentioned about here on various occasions before. So that's very, very interesting. I recommend everyone to look at it. And it was a great rabbi. I think it's actually featured in some of his writings inside there's a special, if I'm not mistaken, actually you can find there's auctionings, I think, of the Chief Rabbi of Baghdad. There's some writings of his, if I'm not mistaken, so that it can be very much found in various different places. I think he was buried in Iraq, if I'm not mistaken. And we've spoken extensively about various other rabbis, let's just say. So that's very, very interesting. Let's explore a bit now over here. We're going to explore in a minute about the chief rabbinate of Baghdad. I think it was very, very decorative, because obviously Baghdad itself was a bastion area, and Iraq, the whole of Iraq, was a very bastion Torah learning area of yesteryear, where there was many, many great rabbis that actually came from there. And I think actually, interestingly enough, we've already spoken about in the series a staggering, possibly 150 rabbis, at least approximately, from Iraq, which is very, very interesting. So I think he was actually, just to go back to Rabbi Abraham Atlan, was the last chief rabbi of Baghdad, I think, of note. So that's another interesting fact we can very much point out within regards to him. So I very much recommend everyone to learn more about him, and so on and so forth. But we're going to explore a bit within regards to chief rabbinate of that specific area over here. Who were the chief rabbis of this of the place in itself? So the Chachmei Bashi Baghdad. So there was many chief rabbis there. So most of the as I said before, he was the last one really till 1932. Before him there was Rav Sasson Kadori, who we mentioned about before. He was between 1923 to 1928. There's another Rav Atlan was between 1930 to 1932. Just hold on a minute. I'm just going to take a short break over here. And So he was between 1932 to earlier. He started in 1930. Rav Sasson Kadori was between 1928 to 1930. Before that was a famous Rabbi Ezra Dangor, Rabbi who's spoken about here on the series on various occasions. Before he was between 1923 to 1928. Remember, he was chief rabbi there, and he would establish a printing house, I think Baghdad, if I'm not mistaken. Before him was Rabbi Moshe Chaim Mashash, I believe, between the years 1918 to 1923. He was one of the great rabbis of Baghdad in his time, and was also a Rosh Abed in the head of Jewish court in Baghdad. Rabbi Yerucham Nisim Elishar, I believe, was between the years 1915 to 1918. It would be good to learn more about him. The famous Rabbi Abraham Hillel was between 1911 to 1915. He was a chief rabbi. He was the head of Jewish court in Baghdad. He was known as one of the most famous rabbis in Babel in his time. He's a rabbi also we spoke about here. I think we've recorded a few videos about him, if I'm not mistaken. He famously was a Talmid of Rav Abdallah Somech. And just a rabbi that we've spoken about. He was part of the Agudat Shomrei Mitzvot, if I'm not mistaken, and wrote various different writings, and he was Dayan and head of Jewish court, and had various different decorated positions all over. There's actually many famous pictures of the great rabbis of Baghdad also together, which I very much recommend everyone to actually observe if you actually check on various different books and various different writings in themselves. So before Rabbi Abraham Hillel, I believe the chief rabbi of happened to have been Rabbi David Papo, another great rabbi. He was a chief rabbi of Bursa I think in Turkey, in Bitula, in Macedonia itself, in Tripoli, in Libya. He happens to have been chief rabbi and took various different things. I think he was one of the managers of the Beit Cholim Miskabladach in Jerusalem, if I'm not mistaken, the head of Jewish court and part of the committee, let's just say, in of itself, that they happen to have been inside that locale. So that's something very much we have to point out also. So within regards to him. So that's also, friends, very, very interesting. So yeah, sorry about that. Just a short break over here for a minute. Who was before Rav David Papa? It was Rabbi Moshe Reuven Tzadka. Now, the great rabbi, I haven't got that much information about him. I think before that, towards the end of the between 1893 to 1905, was famous Rabbi Yitzchak Majaled. Another rabbi I think we did record about. His Kilulu was on the 1st of Elul. We recorded a video about him close to about a year and a half ago, 1.5 years ago. He was a head rabbi in Baghdad. He was part of the Ottoman Empire in those days. He was very close to many of the famous rabbis. He was, I think, Empire Tans at that point in time. He learned in the famous Midrash Bet Zilka under the auspices once again of Rab Abdallah Somech. And I think he would study. He was a rabbi that would work with as a shochet, as a bodek. He was one of the most famous ones over there. And he was a dayan. I think he was part of the 3 great dayans in the Jewish court in Baghdad, respectively, and was close to other great rabbis, including Rab Nissim Chai Halevi, Rab Ezra Yecheskel HaKohen, Rab Avram Yoshua Choresh, and Rab Elisha Nissim Dango, another one of the decorated rabbis. And he comes from very decorated, well-decorated mishpacha in of itself. I think he has a descendant, Rabbi David Menachem, and the famous Payatan Moshe Chavusha happens to be a descendant. Rabbi Majaled, actually wrote many different Torah colossal works, including Likutei Dinim, Akim Et Yitzchak, Tzalach Rechev, various different books he was very much part of over there. I very much recommend people to learn about. Now, before Rav Yitzchak Majaled was the famous Rabbi Elisha Nissim Sasson Dangor, who was a posek, a Rosh Yeshiva, a head of Jewish court in Baghdad, and a chief rabbi between the years 1889 to 1893. And I think before that, again, Rav Avraham Hillel had a few stints as a chief rabbi, if I'm not mistaken. So you can see the importance with regards to Rav Avraham Hillel. He was between, I think, also 1884 to 1886. Before that, once again, Rav Elisha Dango would have the premiership. Remember that this was seemingly rotated on several occasions. Rav Avraham Hillel was before then, 1879 to 1884. And also, again, Rav Elisha Dango was the chief rabbi for several years. And before that was Rav Sasson Smucha, if I'm not mistaken, or Rav Smucha Bar Eliyahu Bar Moshe Halevi. Another famous rabbi of his time. I think he's a rabbi we did speak about also here inside the series. He himself was born, I believe, in the year 1820 to 1910, and was also, let's say, a famous rabbi of his time inside that specific place. And we did record a video about him, I think, back in December 2023. At the time period, I think it was, of his Hilula. He was also part of the rabbinic structure of the Midrash Bet Zilka. Once again, he's very much featured in many famous pictures of Rabbonim. And the 22nd of Kislev, just over a month and a half ago, was his Hilula. And who was the chief rabbi before him? It happened to be Rabbi Ovadia Abraham Halevi. And before that, I think in the mid-1850s, was the first chief rabbi of Baghdad, the famous Rabbi Raphael Katzin. If I'm not mistaken, he was born all the way back in 1790 and passed away in 1871. He was a philosopher. He was a posek halacha. He was a rabbi. He was one of the most famous rabbis, you could definitely say, in Eretz Israel of his time. So that's something very, very much we have to point out over here. So that's very, very interesting, just within regards to him. Just another, I think he was really much of the rabbinic character, fabric of Eretz Israel. I think he had a sefer famously called Derech Hayim, if I'm not mistaken, another famous one that would come out. And he printed many different works in of itself. I think Merachet Shulchan, Lechem HaMarachat, Kvo HaKohen, Yain HaRekach, Likutei Amarim, and was connected to many of the famous rabbis of his day and age. So that's something else that we have to point out within regards to him over here. But that's very, very interesting, friends. And those are the chief rabbis that there were in Iraq of various different points of time. So that's something that we very much have to just state over here inside this series. There's much more to be said. Maybe we will record a video at one stage in time of the history of the chief rabbinate that there was in that specific day of Iraq. I think that will definitely be a very, very interesting video to actually record. And that will be something I'd be very much excited also to do. Now, friends, everyone over here, I'm just going to give a goodbye message just in 1 minute. I'm just going to take a short half-a-minute break over here, and we'll just be back, friends, in just in the next minute over here. So just, yeah, I'll just be back in a half-a-minute, friends. Over here. Yeah, I'm just feeling now. I'm just finishing. 2 minutes, 1 minute. Okay, thanks everyone. We are going to just recap over here. We were speaking about famous Rabbi Abraham Atlan. I'm not too sure the exact date of his Hilula. I believe he passed away around 1947, 1948 time. Happens to be in the Hebrew month of Shvat. We have to point out he was a former Chief Rabbi, the last Chief Rabbi, I believe, of Baghdad of his time. And, he was a rabbi that was very, very famous at that point. And our friends, we're a community here. We love learning about great rabbis of yesteryear. Now, if you descend from any of the great chachamim that we happen to have been speaking about today, please don't hesitate. Please send me an email. I would love to hear more information of the great rabbi that we are speaking about over here, and just to the importance of learning about the great rabbis of yesteryear, how much of a privilege it happens to be over here. And we're a community. There's no community like ours over here. We've already, friends, recorded about 1,400 biography videos of great chachamim that there were of yesteryear. So that's something I very much have to point out over here. So that's it's very, very rare. You will actually see this is something I have to point out. In this series, we're trying to formulate at the moment and some sort of form of encyclopedia at the moment of great Rabbanim. That will definitely be a great privilege and something that very much I'm planning to do over here inside this program over here. So that can only be done with all your help. All the fantastic feedback, it gives me a lot of chizuk, I must say, over here. Whenever there's like so many fantastic comments about people that really appreciate learning about their ancestors, a lot of grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren of people will tell me over that they are watching these clips. So that always gives me a huge amount of pride just to know that we can bring that. Don't forget, whenever it's a hilul of these rabbis, if we can actually source and actually say the date of those hilulot itself, light candles in memory. It's a very, very powerful aspect in of itself. That's something that we have to very say. We're going into Parshat Bo this week, Shabbat Parshat Bo. So I recommend everyone to on the actual on our community page. We do record a video with in regards to an insight with regards to the weekly Torah portion. That's something I would definitely have to state over here. So that's something also very, very exciting that we are doing at the moment. And friends, we've got more great content over here. So please don't forget to leave feedback and any information you want, any comments you've got, please, I'll really, really appreciate it. Wishing you all a fantastic Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom Umavrach. And we're going to learn more. We're going to educate through ourselves. And I think it's very, very important. And don't forget, everyone, anyone you're tuning in live at the moment, please subscribe to the channel and join our community. And then by subscribing, you just get to see all the content the whole time. And whenever we go live, we do loads of live videos over here, and that'll be appreciated. So wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom. Thanks for watching. And